This is the Tree of Life, Season 29, Chapter 8. In this episode, we will be elaborating on the analogy in the last episode, involving the eye, and specifically relating how reverse substitution events and substitution events are distinct receptors. In the last episode, we talked about how the boundary between reverse substitution and substitution events determines the focus of one's attention. To reiterate, imagine that the flowing of consciousness into the vessel through reverse substitution is like the light flowing into the eye of the soul. Imagine that substitution events, or more precisely, infinite recursion, represents the result of the filtering of that light through the process of negation and sublimation. As we saw in many previous episodes, reverse substitution events, acquiescence precedes negation, sees the conversion of a digital to an analog structure. In sequential substitution, we see a subsequent substitution event, negation precedes acquiescence, where that analog structure is converted back into a digital structure, as the originally affirmed impulse expands to become the not set of the substitutionary impulse. In the absence of negation at the conclusion of a reverse substitution event, the flow of consciousness into the vessel is unimpeded. In the negation at the conclusion of reverse substitution, we see the implication of a potentially infinite number of descending paths, each with the conversion of an analog structure to a digital counterpart. If we imagine that reverse substitution events, without negation, act very much like cones within an eye, and substitution events as rods within an eye, we can imagine that these two forms of events, corresponding in reverse substitution to lone acquiescence, and in a substitution event, to negation preceding acquiescence, represent distinct consciousness receptors capable of receiving consciousness from outside. Finally, we see a third option, a third type of consciousness receptor, in sequential substitution events, where acquiescence precedes negation followed by acquiescence. Conceptualizing reverse substitution events in terms of acquiescence, and substitution events in terms of negation preceding acquiescence, permits us to interpret the neuronal machinery of the brain according to these three distinct methods of reception. If we imagine that lone acquiescence sees no filtering of the collective consciousness of humanity, we can understand that the phenotypic characteristics of said neuronal activity should match the collective. Whereas, in sequential substitution and in substitution events, either acquiescence-negation-acquiescence, or negation-acquiescence, we should see some filtering of the flowing of the collective consciousness of humanity. This means that in some cases, depending upon the impulse in question, the negation in either case may inhibit the reception of certain classes of consciousness within that vessel. In this case, there may be a mismatch between the phenotypic or behavioral characteristics of a subject given a common genotype. That is, in the case of sequential substitution and substitution events, epigenetics will play a role in the ultimate phenotype. We saw that whether full infinite recursion occurs depends upon the absence of hierarchical compulsion within a substitution event. We also saw that nonlinearity may entail the existence of two contradictory digital structures within distinct domains. These two structures represent reversed priority within the hierarchical flow of consciousness. But interestingly, this compulsion is also signified by a flipping of phase of a bodily rhythm or cycle. That is, the network of nested substitution events, consciousness receptors, may not be activated by the initial negation, in the presence of some hierarchically induced acquiescence, but instead may provoke a bodily rhythm or cycle to its completion. We must imagine thus that domains comprising hierarchies represent reversed priority to the flowing of common consciousness. That is, they are like reverse substitution events, plain acquiescence, but with a reversed effect. I would suggest that they may represent a fourth type of consciousness receptor, the receptor for pure negation, not followed by acquiescence. But they can form complexes comprising common negation. In conclusion, there are four types of neuronal arrangements which act as consciousness receptors in the brain. Type 1, pure acquiescence, not followed by negation. Type 2, acquiescence followed by negation followed by acquiescence. Type 3, negation followed by acquiescence. Type 4, pure negation, not followed by acquiescence. That's the end of the podcast for today.